House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. Before we get to that issue, let me go back to this Zuckerberg letter. Now, the timeline is critical here because he very plainly stated to you in that letter that, in fact, they were pre-bunking. The FBI was meeting with big tech companies in the lead up to the 2020 election. They were warning these big tech companies, again, weekly, that they may be victims of a Russian disinformation campaign that may be about Hunter, about Joe, and about Burisma. Now, the FBI that was meeting with big tech, they had verified the authenticity of Hunter's laptop in March of 2020, before these meetings ever took place. Okay, then when the New York Post story broke, and Meta, at the time Facebook, and X, now then Twitter, they asked, is this the disinformation you've been telling us about, or is it true? They knew it was true, and they didn't tell them the truth, and they allowed them to censor it. And then 51 former Intel officials come in behind that, you know, organized by Wink and Tony Blinken, know nothing about the laptop, and, oh, this has all the earmarkings of a Russian disinformation campaign. Right. Now, you tell me, is that the deep state? Is that our intelligence community, our FBI, our DOJ putting cinder blocks on the scales of a presidential election? Did they flip the election in Joe Biden's favor?
Right, Sean. That's why the timing of this letter from Mark Zuckerberg to us is so important, because we don't know what they all might have had in lined up for this October. What was the October surprise? What's it going to be this time? We want to make sure it's not censoring information that the American people have a right to see and know when they're making the most important decision we make, who's going to be commander-in-chief of our country. So understand what Mark Zuckerberg put in that letter. He said, A, the Biden-Harris regime pressured Facebook to censor material. Second, they in fact did censor material, largely conservative. And then third, that he talks about how they throttled back the very thing you were talking about, the Hunter Biden story. They throttled it back because they had done the whole pre-bunking. Our government had met with big tech, Twitter, Facebook, all these had met with big tech and prepped them for this. And then fourth, and just as importantly, he says he will not be doing the Zuckerbucks this time around, this election. Thank goodness for that. So 4 key facts he pointed out in that letter. But I think the timing is so important, because we don't know what they may have in store this election. What are they going to try in October? Let's make sure it's not censoring information that the American people need to know before aborting an election.
All right. So then we have this other Supreme Court decision. One was about the issue of student loan forgiveness. Okay, the Supreme Court was very clear. They stopped it. Okay, now they came back today and they stopped it again. This is now the second time they've had to stop it. They didn't care what the Supreme Court said the first time. They just wanted to, give out money, hand out. I hope you'll vote for us. Here, let me pay off your student loan, and we'll take American taxpayer dollars to do it. So we have Judge Merchan's case, 34 convictions, but we know in that case that evidence was introduced in that trial that from Donald Trump's presidency, which would be covered by another Supreme Court decision. That's the immunity decision that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden hate so much, which would compel Judge Merchan, if he had any fidelity to the law, to vacate the guilty verdicts. And then they'd either start anew, but they can't use evidence that the Supreme Court said they can't use, but he's going to sentence this guy later in September?
They allow in evidence they shouldn't have. They wouldn't allow Brad Smith, the expert on campaign finance, to testify. And the judge's daughter worked for Harris, worked for Biden in 19 and 20, and her company, Authentic Campaigns, made, what we can tell just from public records, it looks like $9 million. So we've sent a subpoena saying we want to know the communications that may have taken place between Authentic Campaigns and the current Biden and Harris campaigns. What's happened here in the last year since this case, this lawfare case, this ridiculous case was brought against President Trump. And hopefully we'll get that information ASAP, because we just know that this case is ridiculous from the get-go, all the things we just talked about. But this conflict of interest the judge has is really, really significant. All the experts say he should have recused himself, but he didn't. And so we want to know about any communications that have taken place since 2023 when this case began.
All right. Jim Jordan, as always, thank you, sir.